All right. Well, welcome to our online leadership workshop on decision making. So today we're hoping to equip you with some decision making leadership skills. And if you are joining us for a student organization or to get some development, you might notice in the bottom left-hand corner that this is part of the SOLD series or the Student Organization Leader Development Series. But if you are not a student organization leader, that is totally fine, and we're happy to have you here as well. Hopefully, either way, you can learn something new and build some skills around decision making. So to introduce myself, my name is Olivia Brown. I am the Assistant Director here at the Center for Leadership.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tierza Watson. I'm the director of the Center for Leadership at Elon.
Awesome. So before we dive into talking about decision making, we wanted to go over a little bit more about the Center for Leadership, who we are, why we're here today talking to you all about these leadership skills. So the mission of our office is for Elon students to graduate with greater leadership self-efficacy, which is your belief in your ability to do leadership. So we want all students to know that they can be great leaders and they have the ability to do leadership. We also want students to graduate with the desire and the ability to work collaboratively with diverse communities of people. When you graduate, and also probably right now, you are working with people who are different than you, have different backgrounds, have different upbringings, different opinions. We want you to be well equipped in the workforce to be able to interact with as many different people as possible in different communities. And then lastly, we want students to graduate with the confidence and competence to put innovative ideas into action for positive change. So again, this is our mission. We are here as the Center for Leadership to serve all Elon students and hopefully equip them with leadership skills so they can do these things effectively at Elon and beyond. We also like to tie all of our leadership workshops to career readiness. So we know you're here at Elon to get a degree and to get the grades and to get the credits that you need to graduate. But we also want you all to be prepared for the workforce. So we base all of our workshops on what we call the NACE career readiness competencies. So you'll see them here at the top of the screen. The National Association of Colleges and Employers have put together these competencies for college students by interviewing and taking surveys from employers, from talking to college career centers, so what would be the equivalent of our student professional development center, and talking with higher education professionals across the country to say, what are the skills, what are the competencies that graduating college students need to be successful in the workforce or to be successful for employers? And so these are the competencies that they came up with. So we have professionalism, communication, critical thinking, teamwork, technology, leadership, which is us, equity and inclusion, and career and self-development. So we really like to make sure that students are getting all of these competencies out of our workshops. And if you'll notice, almost all of these competencies, except for maybe technology, have to do with leadership. These are all things that you're going to need to do leadership effectively. So leadership is really embedded into a lot of what employers are looking for. So we think it's great that we're able to do these workshops to, again, hopefully help you to improve at Elon, maybe improve how you work within groups or your student organizations, but also know that this is preparing you for your career, no matter what field you're going into. So lastly, let's talk through what we're going to talk about today. So first, we're going to look at what decision making is, what goes into decision making, how you make decisions. Then we'll talk about some different methods and models that you can use to do decision making. Then we'll talk about how you can make decisions as a group or a team, because sometimes you think about decision making as an individual, but we also want you to think about it as a group making a decision together. So overall, hopefully by the end of this workshop, you'll be able to understand challenges to making decisions, but also methods and strategies to making decisions. We want you to reflect on your own personal decision-making style and your decision-making tendencies. What do you typically do when you need to go to make decisions? And then lastly, we want you to analyze how to make decisions in your student organization. So again, that group and team decision-making, how do you make decisions as an organization, and how can you maybe bring back some strategies to your student org?
Okay, so we're going to get into our workshop topic. Decision making is one of my favorite topics to talk about because it can be very simple or it can be very complex. So I want to start by asking Olivia a couple questions. But what I'd like for you to do is pause the video here, grab a pen and a piece of paper, or maybe take out your phone so that you can take some notes because we'd like you to answer this question as well. So Olivia,
Yes.
what decisions have you made since waking up this morning? Maybe let's just do an hour. If you think about from the time your alarm went off until
Hmm.
maybe you left your house this morning, what decisions did you make?
Yeah, a lot. So I think firstly, I had to decide when to get up.
Mhm.
Sometimes I hit snooze for a few minutes, sometimes I don't. So you have to decide, okay, when am I actually gonna stand up and get out of bed? Then I had to decide. I usually walk my dog when I wake up in the morning. So I had to decide the route I was going to walk her in. Um, I had to decide what I wanted to eat for breakfast. I had to decide whether or not I wanted to make coffee or go buy coffee. I decided to make coffee. I was good this morning. I had to decide if I wanted to listen to music or listen to the news. I usually play something in the morning to wake myself up a little bit, so I decided to listen to the news this morning. Then I had to look at the weather and decide what to wear to work. That's in here too. Um, when I needed to leave to get to the office, if I needed to pack a lunch or not. Luckily, we got a free lunch today, so I didn't need to pack lunch, but typically I would decide what I want to put in my lunch. Yeah, I think that's all I'll say for now.
I didn't count exactly as you were going, but you probably made 15 decisions that were big ones. You probably made about 100 little micro decisions.
Mhm.
Students, as you're listening to this, I want you to realize you practice decision making all day long. And I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves when we get into team or group situations that it can be really complicated. But as you develop your competence, so your ability to use your skills, this is going to become easier and easier. Decision making no longer is something that I'm fearful of as a leader. I know there's a process to do it, and I'm going to take a deep breath and I can. So, all right, thanks for demonstrating that we do this all day long.
Mhm.
So, my second question for you um, is really I want you to think about as a person, like, are there specific decisions we make each day? So you identified that what to wear, when to get up, what to eat, all those good things. But I want to ask you that second question. How do you prioritize your bigger decisions every day?
Mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of it is based on my like overall goals. I think sometimes I prioritize things based on my health or my job, right? There's a certain amount of projects and tasks that I need to do every day when I come to work. So making sure that I prioritize maybe things that are coming up sooner for me. So I think timeline is definitely things that are coming up sooner are prioritized higher for me. I think in my personal life, again, like knowing my core kind of goals and values helps me to prioritize what kind of decisions I make personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing that we have to think about is kind of urgency versus importance. I recently met with a student and we talked about Stephen Covey's kind of four categories about prioritization. And so he talks in his work about is it urgent and important? Is it urgent and not important? Is it important, not urgent, important and urgent, right? And so kind of looking at those kind of four categories, and often that helps you prioritize the decisions you need to make for the day. Well, then
Mhm.
just last question, categories of decision making often come for personal, how I live my life, consumer, what am I going to buy or not buy? And then kind of business in our work life, or if you're in a student organization, what tasks am I going to do um, within that responsibility? So kind of what type of decisions do you think you make the most of during the day? Just your personal opinion.
I I would say I'm trying to decide if it's either personal or business. I think those are the two that I have to focus on the most, just because I work a full-time job now. So business is definitely a lot of, I have to take care of things for work each day. But then I also feel like I make a lot of personal decisions, like what I was explaining of going through my morning. Those are all personal decisions. Um, I could have been making a consumer decision if I went to buy coffee, but I didn't. So, yeah, I would say right now it's probably a pretty equal balance between personal and business.
Yeah. I know when I was a college student, I was very involved. I did intramurals, I was an RA, I was in a couple different student organizations, and I feel like my club involvement and my leadership involvement was the business decisions as a student leader. And I feel like I did more of that than personal. And so I had to learn over time to figure out how to prioritize. Don't forget me and my health and wellness as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I want to continue our interview. What kind of decisions do you make that are unconscious? Can you
Yeah.
give me two examples?
hmm
You don't
I
even
think
think about it.
Yeah, I think one for me is like eating. I think having like good meals and being fueled is something that I do unconsciously now. Honestly, when I was back in undergrad, I did have to consciously decide when to eat, what to eat. Um, don't do this, but sometimes I would like work through lunch or like be busy until 3 or 4 p.m. and not eat until then. But now I think my breakfast, lunch, and dinner are pretty unconscious. Like I get really hungry, I make sure I find food. If I don't have food with me, I'll go buy food, right? So that to me is pretty unconscious. I think another decision that's unconscious for me is something that I didn't talk about with my morning, but like going on my phone every day, I think has kind of become unconscious for me. I'm always checking my texts, my calls. My family doesn't live in North Carolina, so I'm constantly like texting my parents and my brothers. And I think that's something that's also recently become more unconscious for me is that I'm always looking at my phone and deciding, who to talk to, who to text and even just making the decision to be on my phone or to not be on my phone. Sometimes it feels like it's unconscious because I'm just drawn to do it. So I think those are two that kind of come up for me for sure.
Yeah. Would love one example for the second question. So there are decisions that we make all the time. Some are bigger than others. And so we have to be very conscious of the process and what we're kind of information we're gathering before we make the decision. So can you give us an example where you made a conscious decision and kind of how did you attend to details, alternatives, and consequences in that process?
Yeah, something that immediately comes to mind is I'm actually moving in a few days, and deciding where to live was a pretty big decision that I had to think about when I was choosing where to live. I couldn't just close my eyes and randomly point at a map. I had to think about budget, I had to think about location. I'm moving a little bit farther away from where I work now, so what are the consequences or implications of that? So I think moving always has a lot of different details and things that you need to think through before coming to that decision. So that was a big one that I did recently.
Yeah. One that I think will resonate, hopefully, with our college students who are watching this workshop is they've all been through one huge decision-making process already, and that was just choosing a college. So could you give us a little short example of kind of what you went through to choose where you went to undergrad?
Yeah, I think first I collected information about a lot of different colleges. We had college fairs in high school. I did college visits with my parents. And I think between my like junior, maybe summer of junior year or during my junior year, it was a lot of just like collecting different information about different colleges. And then from there, I kind of chose what I was interested in, what I thought I wanted to major in. I wanted to major in business, and that's not what I changed my major, but at the time I wanted a good business school because that's what I wanted to major in. So I was looking at colleges that had good business programs and just thinking about like what were my likes and dislikes and which colleges had those. So that was part of the process as well. And then beginning of my senior year, I started to apply to different colleges, and then once I got some of my acceptances back, then my process became, okay, where am I going to get the most bang for my buck? So maybe like which one has the best business program and has the most scholarship money that I'm getting toward it. So I think at the end of the day, the financial piece became probably the biggest part of that decision. But at the beginning, I think even deciding which schools to apply to, because you can't apply to every single college in the nation, that took a lot of just gathering information, reflecting on myself and where I wanted to be. And then from there, once I applied to the ones that I knew I wanted to go to, just choosing where I got the most money, honestly.
I think that was an excellent explanation and example of a multi-layered decision, and that I appreciate that you shared how you had to pivot when you got
Mhm.
micro decisions within that longer process.
Yeah.
Well, students, as we had you pull out paper and a pen earlier, I would love for you to pause the video and really think about what are some major decisions that I need to make in the next year as a student? Could be about an internship, study abroad program, a job you want to apply for, a leadership position you want to run for election, a volunteer experience, etc. But would love for you to pause the video and jot down a couple things you need to decide about in the next year.
Awesome. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the decision-making environment. So, what is in play when you're making decisions? So it could be collecting information, thinking about alternatives. What are your values? What are your preferences? All of those things that are available at the time of the decision. So here are a few things that you might need or that might be in play when you're making a decision. So the decision you make might be based on your current state. So your emotional state, your physical state, your spiritual state. Maybe you are feeling more angry, or maybe you're feeling optimistic. Maybe you have a lot of energy that day. That can all play a role into your decision. Maybe your decision might change if you get additional information. So maybe you're waiting to make a decision and you get some new information or you get additional information. That might change the way that you make a decision. Your decision could change if you find alternatives. Maybe you think you have two options, but then you find out that you have five options, right? And so you might change your decision based on that if other alternatives come about. And then I think your values also very much affect your decisions. So what you value most, and your values can change as well, because as you grow and change over time, your values change. So these are all things that can affect your decision making. And there's also things that can stop you from making decisions. So we have included a lot of examples here, and I'll go through some of them. So one of them is lack of self-confidence, right? Maybe you don't know if you have the ability to make a big decision. I know when I was choosing a college, I needed to go to other people because I was like, I don't know if I'm making the right decision, right? So that blocked me from making a decision in that moment because I didn't have the self-confidence to make that decision by myself. Maybe going to another one, anticipating you're making a bad choice. So you don't maybe trust yourself and you feel like you might make the wrong choice. So fear of that could be another decision blocker. Um, Unwillingness to consider other options. So instead of weighing the decision and thinking about different pros and cons and things, you don't want to consider other options and you just keep doing what you're doing because you don't want to make a different decision. Maybe you are afraid to make a decision because you are really seeking perfection and you're afraid that, again, that decision won't turn out perfectly, won't turn out exactly the way you thought. Maybe you're not making decisions because you have decision fatigue and there's a lot of different things to choose from. I think now more than ever, decision fatigue is a big thing. And I think decision fatigue is a really big thing, especially for college students, because there's so many different things you could be doing with your time every day. There's so many different things you could be getting involved in. Um, Think about all the decisions I just talked about making in my morning, right? You as a college student have even more decisions to make throughout your day. So that fatigue is very real of I have so many different options or I have so many decisions to make. I don't want to do that anymore. So these are just a few different things of ways that might block you from making a decision. But all that to say, the bottom line is even if you are hesitant to make a decision, you don't know how it's going to turn out, you don't have all the information, you will never have all of the information. So no matter what, decisions involve possibly, decisions always involve some amount of risk. It could be high risk, it could be low risk, but overall there's risk involved. So know that you're going to need to make decisions, and just know that no matter what, there's risk. It might not turn out the way that you expected. Um, so just think about that if you're kind of stuck making decisions.
All right, so let's transition and talk about some ways that you can make decisions. Let's get to the meat of it. So we're going to talk about some decision-making models and methods. So the first thing I want to talk about is some of the ways that you may feel while you're experiencing decision making. So agonizing, this is the method that decision makers need to take a lot of time and thought gathering data, analyzing alternatives. You agonize over it. You get lost in gathering information and weighing alternatives. And sometimes you never get to the decision making phase because you're so stuck in agonizing. I can't make up my mind. The next one, impulsive. This is a method where the decision maker is taking the first alternative available. It's the first thing that comes to mind, right? Impulse, without looking at other alternatives or collecting any additional information. Sometimes people using this strategy operate from emotion and move very quickly to the decision phase. Decide now, think later. Intuitive. So intuitive, this is a method where the decision maker is basing the decision on feelings and emotions that have not been verbalized, right? It's your gut. It just kind of feels right. So you're using your intuition. Delaying is really the method that a decision maker postpones thought and action on that problem until later. Sometimes the decider never gets started. So you're like, I'll think about that tomorrow. I can't deal with that today. Then we have fatalistic. So in this method, the decision maker, it shows you leaving the decision to the environment or to fate. Whatever will be, will be. Okay, you just kind of let circumstances decide. Then there's compliant. And in this method, the decision maker just goes along with the plans of someone else rather than making an independent decision. So if it's okay with you, it's okay with me. So you kind of are suppressing yourself and your desire to engage in that decision-making process. And then there's paralytic. And this is the method where the decision maker accepts the responsibility for a decision, but then is unable to set that process in motion. I know I should, but I just can't get with it, right? And so you're kind of paralyzed. All right, and then we get into what is our experience and what are the processes we can actually use. So I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the pro-con method. Sometimes it's called a T chart. So you put the problem up at the top of the T, and then on the left side, you put what are all the positive things could happen if I make a specific decision? What are all the things that could go wrong, or the cons if I make that specific decision? And once you've done that pro-con list, or interesting implications can be a third category, then you select a decision based on that completed list. Some people will default to whichever one's the longest, but I think it's important to not default to that and to actually look at the content. Sometimes you might only have a few cons, but those cons are significant, or you only have a few pros, but they outweigh the risk on the cons, right? So don't sleep on how you interpret your pro-con list. The next one, reactionary. This is where there's a problem, you feel crisis, discomfort arises, and then you just quickly react, right? And so it's a knee-jerk reaction to resolve the problem. Then there's optimizing, and this is when you actually do take the time to identify alternatives and you choose the best alternative. You got choice A, B, and C. C seems like it's going to pay off best. I'm going with decision C. Then there's satisficing, and so this is when you choose the first alternative. So an example would be, I'm hungry for lunch. You choose the first place you see as you're driving down the road. May not be the best choice, but it satisfies your hunger. So satisficing. Then there's max and max, and so this is when you evaluate alternatives and you choose the one with the biggest payoff. You might decide the payoff, like what's going to be the biggest payoff in choosing my major as an example. Is it the amount of money I would earn? Is it my emotional mental health in this kind of career? Is it match my values? Will it make me happy? And so you look for the one that meets the most of those positive things. And then the last one is max and min. And this is when you evaluate all the alternatives you've come up with. You choose the one with the least potential for disappointment or harm. So an example would be you go with the guaranteed return, even if it's a small return, because it's positive. So at this point, I want you to pause the video and I want you to think through kind of Out of the reactions, which two have you experienced the most? And maybe are an expert in if you do that a lot. Which two have you used the most when it comes to models of interpreting and making choices? And then was one of these most successful for you? Is there one that you have really well developed skills in? Is it a positive model or method? And then what will you do next time now that you kind of have labels and names for these different reactions and models?
So just to go over a little bit of the basics, we actually have an acronym that says DECIDE. So it makes it easier to remember because um, it goes through the different steps that you can do when decision making, and it spells decide. So hopefully that helps you to remember. So D is define the problem. E is explore the problem. C is collect information on yourself or on the situation or both. I is interpret the information. D, decide what to do. And E is evaluate at a later date. And then to take a deeper dive, some more things that you can do when decision making is gather as much information as possible. Sometimes you might not have the time to gather information, but if you do have the time, definitely take some time to look at the different information and think about the different implications. Outline the criteria that can help you analyze the problem. Maybe that is a pro and con chart, like Tierza mentioned. Predict what will happen if you fail to take action. So what will happen if you don't decide? What will happen if you don't make a decision or don't take action? Think about all of the consequences. So think about when you make that decision, what might happen? What might the consequences be? What might the implications be? Talk it over with somebody. I'm a big fan of this one. I think when I'm making a decision, sometimes I just need to talk through it with somebody. Sleep on it. So if you're somebody who makes impulsive decisions or you're quick to make decisions, maybe because you're in a certain emotional state or you just make decisions fast, maybe take some more time and sleep on it, especially if you're tired, because I know sometimes when I'm tired, my decision making is different than if I am well rested. Avoiding emotional decisions. So I think this kind of plays into that as well. So making sure that you're kind of balanced in your emotions and not just making those impulsive decisions just because of your emotional state. And then minimizing regret. Like we said, sometimes you make a decision and it does not turn out the way that you thought it would. And there's always maybe some risk with each decision. So just making sure that when you decide, that is the decision that you've made and you're going to go with it and make the best of it instead of thinking about what you should have decided or trying to go back in time. And then Tirza, did you want to talk a little bit about the highlighted box there?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of pieces of leadership that are self-awareness piece. So when we look at the social change model of leadership, this is the consciousness of self area. So these are the individual values of leadership. How aware am I of my styles, my behavior patterns, and how do they impact my ability to make a decision? So for those of you that have taken the Myers-Briggs type indicator, it's a personality inventory. There is your third letter. So it's either thinking or feeling. That's the decision-making scale. And so folks that are thinking oriented, they're very logical and analytical as they look at maybe their alternatives, right? They analyze. Feelers, on the other side, they're going to really think about, does this decision A or B match my values? If I'm making a decision on behalf of a student organization or a team or a group of people, does it match the values of our organization? And so that might help. So they're thinking about the people involved and how it matches the purpose of that group or the values of that group. If you've taken the Clifton Strengths instrument with us, which is one of the workshops that we do in person, you will find out what your top 5 strengths are. There are 34 strengths. Sometimes the way you make a decision might be completely different from somebody who doesn't have that strength. And so being aware of how that impacts others. So for instance, I have responsibility in my top 5, and because I feel that sense of responsibility that something needs to be taken on, I have to be very aware that I might make a decision and get it done, right? But I didn't take the time to invite others in. And so I always want to make sure that I've had other voices before my sense of responsibility to make sure it's done takes over. True colors is another inventory that we do. With true colors, you're getting a typology, so blue, green, gold, or orange. And that color type indicates how you work within a team, right? How are you working within a group? And so a blue, which is very relationship oriented leader, might respond very differently than a gold leader who's very task oriented. Then there's just general things about your leadership style, which I've mentioned a lot of those. And then the last one, I think really is about your decision-making experience. You know, when we come to college, lots of times our families have been making a lot of the decisions for us. And so you're learning how to make decisions on your own. You're learning how to make decisions with people that you haven't grown up and been around with all your life. You're forming new friendships and relationships and student organizations and teams and on-campus jobs. And so really thinking through how am I developing my experience? And the more experience you get, the easier it becomes. Okay, so let's move into group and team decision making. So we're going to go over a couple different ways. If you are in a team and you as a group are trying to make a decision, it's not just one person being responsible. So let's go through these. Okay, so the first one is based on that Myers-Briggs, which I just talked about. So this is a personality inventory. And so you have 4 letters. The first scale is extrovert or introvert, and that's really your orientation to the world. Are you tuned to the outside or the inside? But the second scale is how you take in information. And so that is sensing and intuition. So that's at the top of our graphic. The third scale, as I've already described, is the decision-making scale. So it's thinking or feeling. When you make decisions is your focus. And then that last letter in your typology is the lifestyle scale. Are you really orderly and organized, or are you more a go with the flow person? If we pay attention to just the 2 middle letters of everybody's type, and we follow this zigzag pattern, every person in the group is going to be fully invested in participating twice, right? Because it's part of their type. And the other parts, you can bring them along to join you. And so I've used this method with groups to decide what to do for homecoming float. I've used it with student government to figure out how they wanted to write legislation that they were struggling with. To ask the university to change a policy. I used it with a faculty and staff committee deciding to change a large policy at the university because we just got stuck. And so this really works. So you start with sensing. What are all the facts? So let's say that we brainstorm 30 facts about our issue. So let's say we write them down on the dry erase board. You then slide over to intuition. Okay. And then you go, well, what are the patterns? What are the themes that we see? So let's say that instead of writing them on the dry erase board, let's say our 30 facts were on 30 post-it notes. So we start stacking post-it notes on top of each other that are similar, or maybe we rewrite our list. Let's say those 30 facts now become 6 themes. We're then going to slide down as a group to thinking, and we're going to use logic and analysis. What are the issues for each one of these themes? Are there facts that we need to attend to? Are there criteria? There are pros and cons to each one of those. So again, using that logic and analysis, what are the assumptions we're making? And so writing those down. Then lastly, we slide over to feeling. Now that we've looked at the facts, we've looked at the themes, we've looked at what the analysis is, which one feels right for our group now that we have all this information? And so again, if you go through this Z pattern, everybody should be pretty invested and engaged. And I've seen it work successfully in a lot of different situations. Okay, our next one is called the 5 whys problem. And Olivia shared with me earlier, she actually learned this one in college.
I did.
Basically what you do is when you have a problem, you ask the group that's there trying to figure things out, you ask them why 5 times. And so as you can see on your screen, this method was created actually by Toyota Industries, the car company, car manufacturing. And so anytime there's a problem, you go, why do you think that happened? The group responds. Then you say, well, why do you think that happened? And you just keep saying why until you've gotten through 5. And hopefully you peels back all the layers of the onion, to use that analogy, and you get to the root of the problem. So we're going to show you an example. So let's say, oops, sorry, this was the method that I just went over. So I'll go to our actual example here, and we'll go back and look at that. The 5 whys. So let's say that we are a printing company and we're printing some posters for a client, and they're refusing to pay for them. And so the first question is, why aren't they paying? And the response was the delivery was late, so the flyers couldn't be used. The event was over. Well, why? The printing job took longer than we expected. Why? We ran out of printer ink. Why? The ink was used in a large last-minute order before we did that one. Why? We didn't have enough ink in stock and we couldn't order new supplies in time to meet the original deadline. So that was the bottom line. They had a problem with supplies they needed to respond to this. So the countermeasure, find an ink supplier can deliver at short notice, so we can reduce inventory and waste. Or maybe it's always have a set of ink cartridges or whatever the process is ready to go, something in stock. So Olivia, if we can go back, we'll just kind of look at this method again. So bring the team together to identify a problem, ask why 4 more times, discover that root cause, and then figure out how can we respond to that root cause. And then you monitor to see if it works better the next time. All right, the next one is one that we really like because it's kind of creative and fun. It's called the six thinking hat methods. We're going to link this video below. So when you get done with this video, go down into the show notes and watch this very quick, short video on this method. But we think you'll enjoy it. And so here's what the 6 thinking hats are and do. So if you're wearing the white hat in the decision-making process, you are the person who is all about the facts, and you want to make sure that you ask every person that's helping make the decision what's going on. So you list the facts. The red hat person, they help everybody express their feelings. So they might ask everyone around the table, what feels right to you? What feels wrong to you? What are your likes? What are you afraid of? Then the person wearing the black hat, they play the pessimist. What could go wrong? What are the risks? And so they represent those. They speak those out loud so they can be discussed. The yellow hat person, this is the optimistic person. Well, what could go right? Right? It's okay to ask what could go wrong, but you need somebody also, that yellow hat, to say, well, what could go right if we decide A versus B? The green hat person focuses on alternatives, and so they help generate a bunch of different options. So maybe they write down 4 or 5 options, they share them with the group, so the group can then start discussing those. And then that blue hat is really focused on control and actually progressing. They might lead the group and ask each person to share based on their hat type. And they can also decide what hat they want to wear. Sometimes they echo somebody else's voice or add to what should be considered if something's been missed. So go back and watch that short little video. We think you'll like it and it'll make it real clear.
So hopefully those models and strategies for decision making can be helpful. I think decision making, again, is something that's really important, especially with student organizations or just as a student leader in general. It's important to bring other people into the conversation with you when making decisions about the group. So hopefully those models and those different strategies will be helpful for you. We want you to reflect and think about these moving forward. Again, as you go back to your student organization or maybe a group project or something that you're doing at Elon, and think about these reflection questions. So I encourage you to maybe pause the video, take a few minutes if you want to write more of these down or just think about it, because if you reflect and think about how you're going to use these and use this information moving forward, you're more likely to get out more of this workshop rather than just sitting, listening, and moving on with your day, right? Like really reflect and think about what this information could mean to you. So the first question that we want you to pause and think about and maybe write out is, when thinking about making personal decisions, what's one thing that you want to do differently next time you're struggling? So thinking about maybe a personal decision that you've made, or even a decision that you have coming up that you haven't made yet. How might you use one of the strategies that we talked about in this video to do decision making differently next time? Maybe you're struggling with something, maybe something in this video will help you with that. So what's something that you could add to your decision making personally to move forward and hopefully help that a little bit? And then if you are watching this as a student organization leader, I want you to think specifically about these questions. So firstly, what decision-making style process is used most in your student organization right now? So is everybody at the table? Are you maybe using the different methods? Like maybe there are different people wearing different colored hats, or you are using a method where everybody can put ideas out onto the table. Like the zigzag method that Tierza talked about, right? Like, what is that process that your team is using right now? Does one person just make all of the decisions and tell the rest of the group about it? And then also going off of that first question, does that work for most people? So is that working for your group, that method that you've identified? What's working well? What's not working well with that? When you are in your student organizations, if there's a disagreement about a decision, how's that handled? Are you discussing it openly? Are you maybe avoiding that conflict as a group, right? How is it handled if there's a disagreement? And then lastly, is there a specific style of leadership used to guide your group through decisions? So again, what might that method or style of leadership be where your group can be guided through decisions and it's not just one person making the decisions for everyone? So again, go ahead, please take a pause, think about these questions, reflect, because I think you're going to get more out of this video if you really apply it to your own life and your own student organization. And then lastly, I want to talk about the Center for Leadership because, again, we are a resource for all Elon students to develop their leadership. We want you all to be well prepared to be leaders, not only at Elon, but after you graduate. So definitely come visit us. We're on the second floor of the Mosley Center, right up the stairs next to the mailroom. If you want to reach us, we have an email at lead@elon.edu. We have a bunch of resources, and I'll talk about a couple of them in a second, but you can find information about all of our resources on our website, which is just elon.edu/lead. Please also follow us on Instagram. We have a lot of events and we have in-person workshops as well as online workshops. So definitely follow our Instagram. We also do like free book giveaways, different campus events. So definitely stay tuned on there. And then again, all of our resources are here for you and free to Elon students. So of course, leadership workshops, we have them in person, we have them online. Definitely visit our website. We have a ton of different topics. So if this was helpful for you and you want to learn more about other topics, definitely check out more leadership workshops. Phoenix Leaders, you'll see a picture of our cohort here, but Phoenix Leaders is primarily for first-year students who are looking to really jumpstart their leadership journey. So maybe you haven't gotten involved in anything yet, or you're looking for different ways to do leadership on campus, Phoenix Leaders is a great way to start. So definitely check that out if you're an emerging leader. The Leadership ELR. If you are watching this as a student organization leader and you have a leadership position in your org, you might be eligible to get the Leadership ELR. So you could get graduation credit through your student organization involvement and leadership. So definitely, again, go back to our website if you're interested in getting the Leadership ELR for your student position. We offer more resources for this, but just wanted to give a few examples of ways that you can really plug in and get involved in the Center for Leadership. And with that, I'll wrap us up. Thank you so much for joining us and for watching this video. Please go down to the description of this video to the notes below. There's going to be a little handout information sheet for you for some videos like Tierza mentioned. That hat, the Thinking Hats video will be down there. So definitely go look at those resources. We also want to hear feedback from you. So if you've got to the end of this video, there's also going to be a short survey if you click the link below, and we'd love to get a little bit of feedback about our workshop. So please fill that out as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.